Hi, it's Brad from Headbangers. Today we've got Scott from Cloak. We had an amazing chat about the new album that's coming out, how he's influenced, black metal, with some new guitar playing that was influenced by his solo projects that's now formed into the band. We also get to talk about his personality a bit. He does a lot of graphic design and other creative aspects of the band, including that he used to film some music videos. He now edits some. So we have a big chat about that as well. We hope that you enjoy the episodes. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to see more. We're also on social media. It's everything is Headbangers Podcast except for Twitter, which is Headbangers Pod One. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the episode. Headbangers. Welcome back to the Headbangers Podcast, where your hosts Nathan and Brad. Here today, we're joined by Scott from Cloak. How are you doing, man? To start off with.
I'm all right. How about you guys?
Yeah,
Yeah,
doing good,
pretty
man.
good, man.
Doing good. So one that we always like to start is what's your like funniest gig or tour story that you can recall? I'm sure you've had plenty of adventures in your time. So what's one thing that sticks out to you the most?
Um, Honestly, nothing is sticking out to me right now, but about every time we go on and do festivals, we have more of an extensive stage setup than most bands, and the promoter, the stagehands are always yelling at us. So that happened last weekend in Durham, and it's always like, cut the candles, we can't do this, we can't do that, and that, and we're just like, we got to do our fucking show. So we're going to set it up the way we need to. But yeah, we're always pretty much pissing off all those people, and not on purpose. It's just because it takes a little bit longer for us to do it. So not so much a funny story, but more of an annoyance every time that we have to do festivals. I'm sure it'll happen in Baltimore. We got to go up next weekend to do a fest there. So
I'm just surprised that like they get pissed off about it because surely like, after all that time in the industry, they've seen like a lot of bands, much like yourself, that, they take a lot of theatrical approach to their, performance. I don't know why they would have a problem with it. There's so many bands that do that, even like, big bands and stuff like in the
yeah.
pop industry or any other stuff like that. They've always got like, excessive stage productions. I don't know why that'd be an issue, especially given, you guys as well.
Yeah, I think it's just because the turnovers at festivals is so quick. You have to change over your set in 15 minutes, I mean, come on, it's a bit ridiculous. But they just expect each band to throw an amp up and not change the drum set at all. And these things take time. But yeah, festivals aren't, honestly, because of that reason, are never really my favorite to play because it's a good sampler is kind of what is the way that I view them. And, when you do your own shows, you can do it more the way that you want to, or when you're on tour, it's a lot more customized to where you want to go with it. So yeah, it's always,
Oh
it's
yeah,
always, it's always a pain in the ass, but worth it in the end.
Yeah.
yeah. I imagine like festivals are more restrictive in that sense.
Yeah.
Um, so I gotta say, I listened to your new single, "The Holy Dark," loved it. Thought it was absolutely great. I just wanted to ask, could you take us through like the creative process for that track and how it sort of differed from like all the other ones that you've done in the past?
Sure. Yeah, first of all, I appreciate it. That's actually been our fastest growing single, one that we didn't really expect to be that. We thought Invictus was going to be kind of the one. And I think in a way, maybe it is, but it was the first one that we brought out. So Holy Dark, it had two stepping stones, which were the first two singles. And then that one kind of took off more. But yeah, I mean, it's funny that you asked that because it was different, especially for the Holy Dark, because during 2020, I toyed around with doing a solo project that was going to be more um, classic black metal uh, sounding, more like early Gorgoroth and Sargeist and stuff like that. And so I had a couple songs, and that was actually Holy Dark, before it was called Holy Dark, was one of the demos that I had recorded, and it was slightly different. And I showed the guys the song, and I can't remember if they said something or I said something, but we were just thinking maybe this could be a cool Cloak song because it was the same structure. It started out with that double bass, um, the overkill Motorhead beat, but more in terms of what I was doing is more of like a Burzum beat, kind of something like that. But yeah, and we just tried it, and we reconfigured the demo a little bit, and we changed some drum beats to, like, we kept the same riffs, we changed the drum beats, and then we kind of changed the break section a little bit, added the kind of the softer break section, and we're like, this is a Cloak track. Let's just go ahead and keep this as a Cloak song. And I was skeptical of it, to be honest. I was like, I don't know. And I think our drummer was skeptical of it too. But I mean, seemingly it's been the best response of the single so far. So I think it was a good move. And it's interesting how it came about. And to also add kind of a fun fact, the name of my solo project was Black Flame Eternal.
Oh wow.
And so, yeah, and that I never did anything with it. I had about 2 songs recorded that I just did myself. And we just took the name, and we're like, that could be a good album name, because the original album name was actually going to be Ethereal Fire, which is the first track on the album. And we kind of were like, Black Flame Eternal is a cool title, more fitting maybe for this. It's more, has that more like just iconic sound to it, and the 3 words, and each of our last albums were 3 words: 2 Venomous Depths, The Burning Dawn, Black Flame Eternal. So we wanted to stick to the trio of words. And yeah, I've never told anybody that in an interview so far. So that's kind of a cool little fact, how the album title came about too. I think having that solo project frame of mind influenced this new Cloak record 100%, because you always come in and you start a new record and you don't really know what you're going to do with it. I knew I wanted it to be a little more aggressive, but I think doing those solo tracks freed my mind, and gave me the influence to see where I wanted to go with this new Cloak one. So in many ways, that was a pretty important step for me personally for the songwriting on this album.
It's pretty great as
Oh,
well.
yeah, I
That
think,
like you did like this song, and it was like meant to be a solo project, and like now that sort of influenced this new era of Cloaks. It's definitely like supposed to be complimentary, and I hope the other guys are pulling the weight. It seems like you've done a lot of stuff for this album. So no, absolutely. I think it's cool though. And like you said, I think sometimes when you're not focusing on this thing, like like a new album coming out, and then you just focus on something else entirely, I think the creative juices sometimes start flowing a bit more when you're not like directly focused on it. Are you still planning to do like the solo project, or are you more focusing Cloak now that you've issued in this new era?
Yeah, I think once the Cloak writing really took off, and then now we're into the album process, I think that is really a back burner thing. But I had 2 really cool songs, and then 2 synth tracks that I had for the EP. Probably a tape release. Maybe one day we'll put it out, or I'll put it out. Because they were good songs, but it's such on the back burner right now that it's it could be a couple of years down the line. I need to mix them and master them, and then I think I need to add vocals to one of the songs. But
oh yeah, but I do find like if you spent some time writing something else, it puts you into a completely different frame of mind to when you go back to your original thing. But as well, like on the solo project stuff, even just doing your own thing and not releasing it, you can get some like satisfaction from that as well. Like I've got a friend Lee who just like writes brutal death metal tracks like all the time, and it's just for himself. Like there's been times where I've been talking to him, it's like, oh, check this out. I just wrote this today. It'd be sick. You're like, oh, you putting that on anyway? Nah, that's just for me.
yeah,
Like, it's just so funny. Like you get some kind of. I'll know a lot of people that get a lot of satisfaction from just going, this was in my head. I got it out my head, and this is just for me. I like it. I like this. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that for sure. Just to get it out of your mind. And I'm kind of on that creative break now. Every time the album comes out, I don't even think about. I think I took a couple months at the beginning of this year, the end of last year, to do some new demos for like a next Cloak record. But I need that separation. I need that break. So right now I'm not even, we had to do all the music videos and all that, and just the designs and just figuring out everything. And I have a huge hand in all that. So I need that separation now. And then now we're doing touring. So we need to really just kind of refocus on that. And then when we have downtime, we'll go back and start writing again. But yeah, it's definitely a cycle.
That's one thing I wanted to put you up on actually, because like the musical pairings of the videos is incredible as well. What kind of work went into that? And you said you had a hand in that. So, how much were you digging your teeth into that then?
Well, I do all the videos. I've actually edited every single Cloak
Oh
video that
wow.
we've done. Yeah, yeah. And on the second album, me and Max shot the videos. First album, we had just a close friend shoot them for us, and then on this one, we brought in our friend Nick to shoot because we didn't want to shoot him again for this one. Like the lyric video for Seven Thunders, I did all of that, without any shooting. It was just footage I've gathered. And yeah, so for Invictus, we shot it between a couple nights. It was in January. It was freezing. It was like 22 degrees. So that was a night I'll never forget. And it was hard to get through that one, and the fires were blowing out and just massive. We had a lot of wind that night. So it was a challenge, but that always can be a good thing, and it can kind of shine through in the footage. So yeah, we did that, and then I edited that one, and then like I said, I did that lyric video. Actually, before all these, I had some time to get that one together, and then for Holy Dark, it was just the idea I had was to make it a lot more raw and just kind of nasty and gross, and intertwine some footage of some powerful film pieces that I like. And I didn't really, I was like, yeah, this is I think this one could be good, and maybe it'll I didn't really think it would come out the way it did, but I think it's kind of everyone's favorite now. I thought it would be just sort of the last one that we needed to do, and maybe not my favorite, but something still good and substantial. But yeah, I think it exceeded our expectations for sure. So
Was it
we
hard
yeah
for
we
you?
shot.
Like, was it hard for you? Because I know, like, I do like video editing and videography myself as well. Like, was it hard for you to like give the creative control to somebody else to shoot? 'Cause, like, I know you said you were doing the editing as well, and that's still like a fundamental part. But was it like hard for you to not use your own footage to then edit in the future, or was it like a nice sort of collaborative atmosphere for you? Actually,
Yeah, it was collaborative. It wasn't too stressful. I trusted him, and I essentially directed what he needed to do, and it wasn't a big deal or anything. So yeah, it wasn't bad. And he knew what he needed to do. So yeah, it all turned out good.
awesome.
Sweet. How did you sort of get into the video editing side of things? I'm curious. Just because
Um,
I find that stuff sort of interesting how people sort of got into it.
yeah, so I mean, I grew up, in the late '90s, early 2000s was kind of my coming into my um, teen and skateboarding years. So that was how I got into it. Was we were skaters, and then the Jackass stuff came along, so we were
Oh yeah.
filming each other, shit like that. That's just what you did in the burbs. But yeah, man, it was skateboarding and making movies. We started making movies for fun in middle school, high school. I always had a camcorder. I borrowed my dad's, and then eventually got my own, and they were the mini VHS tape camcorders, and I just always loved toying with film and movies. And then I studied it in high school. There was a film class. That's where I learned to do editing. We actually learned on iMovie back then, and then once I got to college, I also studied film. We learned Final Cut Pro,
Mm.
and now I actually use Adobe Premiere. So, and I've worked in film, and I've done, so I have a background in it essentially. But yeah, I got into it through just basically skateboarding, and that's how I discovered punk music and metal music basically as well. So. I think a lot of people my age can relate to that.
Oh yeah, I mean that the skateboarding scene is such a gateway into like just this scene in general. Like it's
Yeah,
crazy how intertwined it actually is. Like I remember
absolutely.
when I was a kid, like I used to hang around with guys who were always playing like I at the time would always sleep on it, never really got into it. But then like as I got older, I'm like, oh no, I actually heard this band back then, and like I regret so much not getting into like metal and punk and stuff like that at an
Yeah, yeah.
earlier age. I was just like completely blind to it. But I
The
used to
Tony
hang
Hawk
around with guys.
soundtracks. Yeah,
Oh mate, that's amazing.
they were iconic. Again, a lot of people. I'm 33, so those were coming out when we were 11, 12, 13, 14. So I was getting tattooed the other day, and there was two guys in there, and we were talking about it, and everybody in that age group and that scene of skateboarding all had the same story. Like, oh, I found this band through Tony Hawk. I found Motorhead through Tony Hawk, Iron Maiden, AFI, Turbo Negro, like tons of bands through that soundtrack. So yeah, it was a staple for our generation. You know, in the 80s, people got into music differently, but in the 2000s, that was a huge gateway for a lot of kids. And skate videos. Like the first time I ever heard Slayer, it was Aggressive Perfector, was in this Zero skate video, and I was like, this is fucking awesome. But I didn't know who it was.
Yeah, it's all
it's
same.
similar for me, just hearing it and then like later on becoming fans of the band and being like, oh, I remember when like
That's what that
so
was.
used to listen to
Yeah.
this at the skate park all the time and shit like that. Like it was just like I'd always used to passively hear it and just never check it out on my own.
Yeah.
And then later on got into it and I'm like, oh, it unlocks so many memories. Like you're
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's like it's in the background and then you hear it. It's like when you hear you know, when you bands have movie clip like movie samples in their songs, and then you see it in a movie that you're watching, you're like, oh shit, that's from that song.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like in the back of your brain, and then you hear it. But yeah, it's cool, man. Like I really appreciated having those growing up, because that was kind of the last era of, you know, like MTV culture. Alternative radio was really big. We had a station called 99X in Atlanta, and they played, you know, Metallica and Green Day and Offspring, bands like that would influence a fourth grader a lot. So that was, yeah, I really appreciated having that. I think that's how a lot of our generation got in. I mean, like alternative music was cool. You know, new metal was getting big, whether you liked it or not. Like I liked, you know, Korn a lot in fourth and fifth grade, and that was kind of the first heavy band I listened to. So it's yeah, it was good to have.
Oh yeah, definitely. One thing that I noticed with you guys when I was listening to you was two things, mainly like the atmosphere and the actual groove, but it still felt like still black metal. I was just wondering,
Yeah.
how do you sort of like juggle those, like, because on paper it sounds like they'd be sort of like opposite ends of the spectrum, but like I think how you guys do it really, it makes it really work well. So like, what sort
Yeah.
of your secret to it?
Well, I think Sean is a very groove-driven drummer. He's really unique. And I think the way that I write songs is actually not really so riff heavy. It's more rhythmic heavy, because I came from punk, and punk didn't have leads. There was no lead playing really in punk. It was all, you know, power chords and rhythmic driven. So I think I still just have that side to me, even though now I like riffs and leads and things like that. But I don't think, like, Cloak has never really been a band where it's been all about the riffs. You know, it's not, you know, those bands that it's all about the riff. But for Cloak, it's about the songwriting. And I think that's really something that, like you said, it makes us stand out a bit. And we do. But we also infuse a lot of leads now, and like the Iron Maiden style leads and things like that. But yeah, we've always been more driven to write a good song and a good rhythmic section to the song, rather than just riff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you
Oh yeah,
guys have like
definitely.
a bit of a rock and roll feel, I thought, as well, which is, I don't know if that's like too off the ball to say, but like, you know, when you listen to songs, like you said, they are really perfectly written, and sometimes that can be lost a bit in black metal. As
Yeah.
much as I love the genre, and I do like the more avant-garde stuff, but you know, it's sometimes nice to hear what black metal would be in that sort of style.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we get that comparison all the time. People throw like black and roll term onto us, which that's kind of a silly term to me. But rock and roll, I mean, you know, metal is rock and roll. So
Yeah.
we wanted to keep that backbone there. Because I mean, we love bands like Judas Priest, Motorhead, and bands like that. But we also love the heavier bands or the thrashier bands. So we like to infuse all that. But yeah, I think it's just how I write songs and how Sean drums, and it just kind of comes across that way. We've always kind of, especially our first two records, had more of that mid pace. It was basically all mid pace feel, and this one we did experiment with going a bit faster. So it's a nice kind of change up, but it still holds that rhythmic feel.
Mm-hmm. Who
Oh,
would you
yeah.
say like
It's
influenced like your guitar playing the most? Like, if you could name like three musicians that like you wouldn't be doing what you're doing if it wasn't for these three people, like who shaped your
Oh
sound
man.
basically.
Um, well, all the way from my youth, I guess I really liked the punk years of a band called AFI.
Yeah,
Um,
AFI, great.
yeah, weird thing to throw out for a lot of metalheads, but again, being my age when that band was coming up, they were like kings of the underground. So Jade Puget from AFI, always thought he was great. Adrian Smith from Iron Maiden is one of my favorites. Um, I don't know if he's one of my favorite. I think he's very underrated. Is Wolf Hoffman from Accept? I think is an excellent metal guitarist. And honestly, James Hetfield from Metallica as a rhythm player, he's incredible. He sings and plays such different things at the same time. It's really impressive. Yeah, him and Dave Mustaine even. But yeah, I would say James Hetfield is more of that solid, just that downstroke, like is super impressive. So yeah, I'd say people like that.
yeah. Also on like sort of Brad's point, what are some of the bands that like influenced the band as a whole that you sort of pulled from?
Yeah. Well, yeah, those bands I mentioned, but as artists, Glenn Danzig, all of his bands. We grew up on the Misfits, Sam Hain, and then obviously Danzig. I mentioned him in basically every interview because as an artist, he kept his own way and he kept it dark and he never really gave a shit what people thought because he always did something a bit different than what was mainstream at the time. Corthon from Bathory, uh, obviously John from Dissection, and yeah, and then Metallica too, and Slayer. So bands like that, the big ones, we love tons of underground bands, but the big ones are the best for a reason.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
definitely. I relate heavy to the Danzig one as well because like my friend James got me into Danzig, and like I
Awesome.
remember he put Mother on, and I was like because I'd never really listened to him. I've obviously always been aware of him, but never had like the chance to like sit down and actually listen to him. He put Mother on. I was like, "What's this?" He like looked at me and he was like, "Fucking Danzig, how do you know what this isn't?" I was like, "This is." I was like, I've just never had the chance to listen to him. Like, bro, he's fucking Metal Elvis, man. Like, he's amazing.
Yeah,
Like,
That's
one of
he
my
true.
just did a
favorite.
deep dive. It was great. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, I love him.
Yeah. Did he show you anything off of like the second or third album?
But he probably did, but I'm terrible at remembering like album names and song names.
Right,
So like, it
right.
was literally just he just queued a shite ton of songs, and we just listened to the whole thing.
Awesome. Yeah, man. That I mean, man, those first four albums really, but the first three, especially for most fans, are just incredible. Misfits were, one of my favorite bands growing up, and they were
Yeah,
so
great.
raw but so catchy. It was like the Ramones, but honestly, almost proto black metal at the time. They had corpse paint. They sang extremely violent lyrics. It was horror based, and then he went into Sam Hain and did almost the pagan pseudo satanic stuff at the time, and that was super different than what was going on. So I mean, yeah, he's just such a massive influence for me, and
Oh
then the
yeah,
rest of us too.
I think the cool thing about
oh yeah,
Misfits as well, like there's just so many different eras that probably influence a different section of different bands. Because then you've got like obviously Jerry Only's little era of Misfits as well, like when they've got proper thrashy and that influenced like the thrash scene really heavily as well. So
Yeah,
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 honestly, him, Danzig, Misfits, everything like that, just incredible influences on everything.
for sure. Even the artwork and the graphic design and the flyers and the shirts back then. I like having an eye for that stuff, and I have a couple books with a lot of the like Misfits art and flyers and photos, and it's amazing. I love all those photographs.
oh yeah. There's like that classic Misfits hoodie as well with like I got the skull on the back. I was like, I have yet to meet anyone into this music that hasn't got that hoodie somewhere.
Yep.
Like I had it,
It's very true.
like every single one of my friends have had it at some point. I'm like, it's literally
Yeah,
like the staple of like when you first sort of get into Misfits, you always buy that same hoodie.
exactly. And yeah, getting a Misfit shirt back then, like in when we were getting into stuff, 2002, 2003. was kind of like a rite of passage. It was like, what is that skull? Like, you go into Hot Topic or something. Because again, that's where you got your band shirts before you kind of when you were younger. But yeah, you'd always see the Misfits stuff and you wondered what it was. And this kid in our school had a bright orange shirt with a black fiend skull on it. And I thought it was so cool because it was like Halloween colors. But yeah, man, like getting those Misfit shirts back then was almost a rite of passage. I still love them. I'm trying to go back now and collect the ones that I used to have that I don't know, like don't fit or got thrown away or given to people. But because a lot of those designs are like huge prints and they look really cool still. So
I'll
Oh yeah,
super dope,
there's
man.
something about it. It's just so this that like merch game, like their merch game back then,
yeah,
top tier. Like,
yeah,
even, like all the way through, top tier. Like every single one, you like look at it and go, "I want that. That looks so
exactly.
like
Yeah.
it's cool." Like
Yeah,
it's so
yeah,
good.
the designs were great, and they didn't get too corny. Like they kind of kept them the original old school, like graphic design. So it was really cool.
Oh yeah, it's the same with like typo negative merch. I'm
Yeah,
yet to see a
Yeah.
typo negative related shirt, like jacket, like hoodie or anything like that that I don't want. Like every
yeah,
time I see it, I'm like, I want that. Like that looks so cool.
yeah. Another artist that's greatly influential for. Actually, I don't know if our bassist really likes typo, but the other three guys, and me and the other two guys like him a lot. But
Oh, they grew on me. My friend
Yeah, I love
Dylan,
them.
massive typo fan, and I
yeah,
never really got into him. And like I was like, you know what? He loves them that much. I'm gonna give him a listen. And
yeah.
like I think I messaged him at like 1 in the morning, being like, I was so wrong about typo. I was there like, they're so good. Like,
Yeah.
why have I given him shit for this for like ages? Because
The
I just
October
had
Rust. Yeah,
oh, mate, I think it's because he introduced me with him like a 7 minute song, and it's
yeah,
like if you're gonna introduce someone, show me like like a quick one, and then be
yeah.
like,
My
okay, he's
Girlfriend's
intrigued.
Girlfriend,
Then
or yeah,
yeah,
like all those hits on October Rust, Love You to Death, all those. I think that's one of the best produced albums I've ever heard. It's so thick and it doesn't sound like any other album I've heard. The guitar tone, the bass tone are so cool on that album.
oh yeah, I
Yeah,
think my favorite song
definitely.
by him is Gravity, in my
Yeah,
opinion. Like
yeah,
the breakdown in Gravity still holds up to this day.
yeah, yeah,
Like
definitely.
it's so good.
Yeah, yeah, I love that band.
So obviously with Black Flame Eternal on the horizon, I did see an article saying, with Sean saying that, the like empowerment and anger were like partly driving forces behind the album. Like, would you be able to elaborate? Is that true? Or, what's your take on it in
Yeah,
that
I mean, it
respect?
was quite tumultuous times in the world when we were writing it. The when he says anger, we're more talking about the violent spirit and the empowerment of the spirit to push through, basically, and that's what that album encapsulates. It's the power of the spirit and the will of the spirit, and having that iron will to keep moving and to strengthen yourself as an individual. So that's yeah, basically what this album deals with, and I hope other people find it empowering as well.
There's something like empowering for you guys as well, like pushing through with this album, again, with those times that were going on, that was definitely not easy for anyone, I suppose, to be creating music at that time. So do you think it's like
Yeah,
something that's personal to you guys as well?
yeah, that and not even related to the pandemic much, but just as a band, it's hard to really make your mark, and we basically were like, we're going for the fucking throat on this album. We want to go harder. You know, we want to make our statement. Basically, I think this record is a big statement for Cloak. So I hope that kind of comes out.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear it, to be fair. I want to ask about you for a second as well. We had a browse of your Insta, and it seems like you're on like a lot of adventures, a lot of traveling. Do you have like one particular adventure that you've been on, or you've been to one place and that was like sticks out as like your favorite?
I've been to Iceland before. That was really cool. I've been over to Amsterdam within the past 5 years or so with family. It was a good trip. Germany as well. Um, I've been to Wyoming, which was a I think 2016, which was a really cool trip. Massive, massive nature over there,
Yeah.
obviously. Huge mountains, rivers. So that was one of my favorites. I almost wish I could go back now, having a different kind of eye for like knowing what I'm gonna get into. I went with family back then as well, but there's tons of places around Georgia too to hike, and it's called the city in the forest because it's so green here. I just like taking my dog around, even around places around my neighborhood, and just kind of I like to be outside a lot. Although Georgia's summer is not my favorite because it's so humid, I try to still get outside as much as I can. But we've had a pretty nice spring so far, and the fall and the winter I always like it here. So yeah, man, I like to be outside as much as I can.
Yeah, and there's like such great scenery like near there as well. Like I've seen pictures and I'd love to go sometime, like I bet for like camping or just like taking a hike, like
Sure.
because I mean, I guess like where we're from, like around Leeds, it's we have some scenery and there is some countryside, but like nothing on the scale of like what you have there. So
Right.
it always looks incredible.
Yeah, I like the English countryside too. I remember when I was over there, I was pretty young, but I remember driving through it. I'd be excited to go back there. But yeah, it has a vibe for sure that the English countryside, it's cool. What do they call the moors? Like the
Oh
hills.
yeah.
Oh,
That,
did
to
he
be
come
fair,
there? Did he come around near Yorkshire area then? Because like the, I guess like we do we know about the moors in Yorkshire? Oh, you're not too sure.
Not too sure, but I'm a big fan of American Werewolf in London, where he
Ah,
says like stay off the moors or
great
whatever.
film.
yeah,
Yeah.
because the moors and stuff like that, they're not really too far from us. Like the Lake District as well is like that's probably like the nicest
Mm,
like place near us, like wilderness. Like because
Okay.
it's just endless, like just full of lakes,
Awesome.
full of like just waterfalls and nice little like rock formations and stuff. That's like a really
Yeah.
nice area.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to go to a place like that.
Oh yeah, you know what? It's cool in some ways, but like we don't have like like the crazy like shit that you guys have a lot of the time where you have like these giant waterfalls and like nice deserts and stuff like that. We don't really have that. It's all kind of like the same sort of thing, like no matter where you go.
Right.
So that's one
Right.
thing I'm
Yeah.
really envious of.
Yeah, like I would love to go to Ireland. It has that kind of vibe that you were talking about, but maybe even more green and kind of hilly and cliffs and stuff like that. But yeah, here America it's cool because it has all of that. Has the desert, which I'm not a huge fan of the desert. I need some green, but
yeah, I prefer the green.
it's okay once in a while. I couldn't live in it though. But yeah, and then you go up north in the Midwest up north, and it's a lot different than say Seattle and Portland, which are a cool area of the country, which are very green. It's very rainy and misty there a lot, but that's probably the best nature you can get as far as mountain hikes and forest hikes. But again, Georgia has Blue Ridge Mountains. North Georgia has tons of camping and hiking that you can do. So, yeah, I like it here. I'm probably going to stay in Georgia. I think everyone in the band really likes it here. So, it's also a city in a way that I feel has stunted Cloak a bit because it's really people don't really expect a band like us to come out of here. It's the like Kylesa and Mastodon and Baroness type of bands, even though some of those bands were Savannah, Georgia, which is a bit south. But it kind of has that vibe to the south. Whereas when a band like us, which is more black metal based, comes out, it kind of throws people off. But we'd be a band that would maybe come more out of the Pacific Northwest or maybe even I don't know the Northeast or something. People I don't think really expected us to come out of Georgia. So it's interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely. One thing I also wanted to ask you is, I noticed that you're also involved with Spellbound printing. Just wanted to
Yeah.
know how you got into that as well. Like, like it must be like pretty like full on to keep up with that as well as the
Yeah,
band.
right now it's still kind of a side thing, but essentially I've always had friends that screen printed. I've always been into graphic design, and I do most of the Cloak designs, not the art, but I get the art and then I design them and do the layout. So it was kind of just that next natural step to get into screen printing. But really, it's Max, our guitarist, that is the main printer. I'm kind of the guy that tries to get the clients and tries to get the designs together. And, we've done some bootlegs that you probably saw, like the Sabbath Headless Cross, and working on some other ones now. But yeah, that's a business where we'd like to go full time with it. There's talks of the owner at his shop maybe fizzling out, and we can maybe take it over from there. But it's definitely a job that allows you to tour. You can get other guys to sort of take over when you leave. So we kind of need a job like that. The more touring we do. But yeah, no, it's me. That's me and the other guitarist, Max. And we try to do as much as we can. We've done a lot of bands, merch down here, kind of the Southeast area. A couple of West Coast bands, some bands touring through that needed some last minute merch designs. So it's good. Yeah, we got a bunch of auto presses at his shop that we use, and then in my basement we have a pretty decent manual. Not using it as much these days, but yeah, it's hopefully it will be full time one day, depending on if we still kind of want to go that route.
I expect that you're hustling, you've got like so many different things that you do, like the graphic design, video, the band, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
do you like to keep yourself busy? That's the impression that I'm getting.
Yeah, I try to. I mean, there's definitely days, today not much is going on. So there's definitely those days where it's I have a pretty free life, which I try to keep it that way. I try to maintain. I'm not that kind of guy that has endless amounts of energy. I don't like having too much to do. I like to work out and exercise as well, and you need to carve out a chunk of 2 hours of your day to do that too. So it's I'm not that guy that is just constantly running around, but yeah, I like to stay busy with things, or else I'll go crazy as well. So I like balance, basically, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I've found that with myself recently, because a lot of things that I do are quite digital, and what my main job is quite digital, like my side hobbies were. So I'd take like a backseat from like doing like photography and video. I started to do like martial arts on Saturdays. I need to do something that's just not looking at a screen, and I could just like properly immerse myself. And I think it's definitely useful. So I'm guessing that's the kind of balance that you would get with exercising and the band, and graphic design. I think having like different styles of hobbies is also quite good, I found anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Super important to be active, especially being on stage. That last festival, I felt like I was going to pass out. It was so hot. Never been as close to blacking out at that show. So you got to keep your stamina up for sure. I might need to do some more cardio, because I've been doing mostly weights and stuff. Because I don't do much cardio, because I've always had that fast metabolism. So it's but maybe I need to get more into it to keep the stamina up. But yeah, I think being active is super important. So like you said, kind of having that screen time as well. And I love movies, so I watch a lot of movies at night. Yeah, I'm a huge movie guy. So every night, basically, I'll try to watch a movie if I can. I like the balance of things. I don't like to. There's people I know that are just constantly running around. They don't have any free time, and that would kill me.
Yeah, just burn out.
Yeah, you burn out.
Yeah, to be fair, I tend to be on that side, because I like to fill up like as much as possible, but I don't realize that I've done it. Like there'll be shit that I've booked like months in advance, like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Then I'll completely forget about it, and I'll just be like, oh shit, and I'll be like, I've got 9 other things to do.
Yeah, it's a lot, man. Some people thrive on that, though. I think like if that's working for you, sometimes I wish I could be a little more like that at times, but it's a lot of band stuff is a lot of hurry up and wait. You know what I mean? It's a lot of even on tour, it's sitting in a van all day, which is not the most fun. But then you get to the venue, and you got to rush, you got to set everything up. So it's a lot of that. A lot of this industry of music or film is just a lot of hurry up and wait. You have slow days, and then you have like really busy fast days. So it's a weird kind of dichotomy.
Oh yeah, it's like the writing process with being in a band. I always find that, to be fair, it's like one of the only processes we've been stuck in at the moment. But the writing process is just like, it's fun, but also just not fun in just such a weird way. It's like, this should be like you know, like such a funny time, but sometimes you'll be sat there thinking, I just wish we were done with this now.
Oh yeah, it's torturous. I mean, yeah, I mean, then again, I guess the kind of music we're writing, you need to put yourself through a little bit of pain or hell to get there. You know, all great art comes from suffering type of scenario. Yeah, it's grueling.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. Everyone always just assumes that. It's like, oh yeah, but writing music must be fun. It's
Nah,
like there's like a 10% chunk where it gets towards the end when you know you're close to the end, but you just have to work out the last few kinks where you're there like, I'm
yeah,
sick of this now.
exactly. And then when you get there, it's like the best high ever. You know, you got that part or that song, but getting there sometimes can be fucking grueling and hellish. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
as it should be, you know, writing this type of stuff. But yeah, it's not. I wouldn't call it fun.
I think like also just like, just doing anything creative, like when you've got to write something, like I've had this like short film scripts that I've been like trying to finish for ages, and I started writing it like October time. I went from like a pace of just writing every 2 weeks. I was like proper into it. And then I just like lost motivation and lost like inspiration. And like I haven't come back to it since because I'm just waiting for that moment. And it's like it's really hard to force yourself to like make something. I think it's much harder than what people think that, don't do anything like that for sure.
Yeah, and you can't force it, or it's just going to be bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool though that you're involved in that. I love trying to do scripts and things like my guitarist who I do the screen printing with. We do, we've been talking about trying to do some sort of short film stuff. We wanted to make like a short Halloween film a couple of years ago, and just things like that on the side, but we never got around to it. But I would love to do that again someday because, like I said, we kind of came up, not him, but my other friends when I was younger, just making movies and things like that. And it's always a good time, and it kind of keeps the creative juices flowing.
Yeah, I always wonder like because I used to do the same thing when I was younger. I used to just like go out with my friends and make movies. Like I
Yeah.
wonder like what the difference is when you get older. Is like you just get more busy or like, I don't know. For me, I think sometimes there's all these things in my head like, oh, how are we gonna get it produced? How's this? How's this? Like I think it's like so much logistics and not just going out and shooting that I think that's sort of lost in that time. But
Yeah.
I think that's what I need to drive back for sure.
Yeah, because now you want it to be, more professional probably now than you did back then.
Yeah.
But that was the magic back being young back then, just doing it, get together and just doing it, not really caring. But yeah, I know nowadays it's when you're older, you want it to be a little more put together and organized, but it's hard to find people to do that with. The older you get, people get married, they have kids, they can't do anything. So, I'm pretty freed up in that aspect. So it's you have fewer and fewer people that can do or even play music with you at this point.
Oh,
That's very
I
real.
found that when I was like first doing bands at like 19, like
Yeah,
you'd put a post up and then all of a sudden you'd have an inbox full of like also 19-year-old guys being like, I want to start a band too. And you'd
yeah,
have like just endless people. But then as
yeah,
it gets more serious, you're like, oh, I know what I want to do with music. This is my sort of vision. And the
right.
older you get, the less people you go that'll go, oh yeah, I'll do it because chances are they're like, "Oh, I'm already in like four other things. I just don't have time to do it. Like,
People run out of time or they have kids and um it's harder and harder, and now entering my 30s it's just extremely hard to find people to do it.
No, I
oh
can
yeah, definitely.
imagine. So we do have
Yeah.
one more question for you. It's one way that we always like to leave it now, but um, if you and the band were in a zombie apocalypse or any kind of apocalypse, which member would you be least reliant on, and which member would you be most reliant on? Name and
Oh
shame.
man, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings here, but I'd probably be, well, man, you're gonna put me on the spot. They're gonna be mad at me. um I rely on Max the most in the band to do things, so maybe I'll choose him. But I don't know, the rhythm section, they can figure their own shit out. Yeah, so I'll just leave it at that.
So Max can see the podcast, then there's nobody else.
Every
The other,
time,
I love the other guys too, but me and Max do the most. We have the most time to do the most stuff in the band, so that was kind of a joking way to answer that question. But yeah, I think they're all pretty reliable guys. I think we'd be a tight group together in the apocalypse. So
Yeah, a safe
Every time,
answer.
like,
A good one.
every time we ask that question, I always like have just the image in my head of like next band practice being like, all right, who was it?
yeah,
So,
exactly.
I mean, like,
There's always, yeah. I mean, the joke is the bass player, but which I'm sure many bands have chosen on the podcast.
yeah. To be fair,
Yeah.
there is like the ratio between bass player and not bass player when it comes to like the least reliant one. It's like it's always the ratio is more bass player.
Yeah, exactly.
Once we've got the bass player on, then different answers.
Yeah, he's like the fucking lead singer, man.
Fucking guy. He's always putting me through shit, man.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But,
thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. But I can't wait to listen to the new album. And if you're listening now, yeah, make sure you go check that out. Is it May the 26th, I believe? Is it? Yep.
Cool.
Check it out then.
Awesome. Appreciate it, man. Thanks to both of you for having me on. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah,
no
not a problem at all.
It's been
Thank
great
you.
speaking to you.
Awesome. All right.
Awesome. Right. See you in a bit. Thank you.